Hello, everybody. How's everyone? Mr. Paul. How's everybody? So this looks good. That looks okay. Let me just, there we go. Half blue, half orange. Hope everybody's all right and staying safe. We are starting to open up some stuff here in Montreal in the next couple of weeks. Some stores will be allowed to open, and slowly things are going to move on. Still a lot of stuff will be closed, but we're getting there. We're getting there. And here we go. Pop-up chat. The chat is here. And here we go. Da, 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 da. Hey, everybody, welcome aboard. This is the live Shortwave show. We are here twice a week on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 0 UTC on Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. That's 20 UTC. We talk about radio. My name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. That's the northeast part of North America. And, of course, we talk about shortwave radio, anything radio, all radio, just radio, and radio. And, of course, we have a lot of fun, and we're with great people that are having fun. And, of course, we answer questions. There's a beautiful chat room with wonderful people. And we do have a Facebook group of the same name, Official SWL Channel. And this is for, where it continues. When it's ending over here, it continues on the Facebook group. And so this is a fantastic place to be if you are a radio geek of any kind. So hope that you enjoy the show today. And of course, Mr. Paul the Cat is here to everybody's enjoyment. And hope that you enjoy. Mr. Paul is on this side sleeping and enjoying the moment. So hope that everybody is well and that everything is pretty cool. So, hey, it's Wednesday already. Time goes really fast. I just can't, I have a hard time coping with how fast everything is going right now. And, even with what is going on, it's, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of getting used to it at some point and to some extent. So, hope that you'll enjoy today's show. Hope that everybody will be happy. And of course, Mr. Paul the Cat wanting to have a little bit of petting. So welcome, everyone. And we are, of course, going to have today some questions. We got a guy named Jacob. He is in Tennessee. And Jacob has a lot of questions and a lot of little things that are kind of bothering him. And he wants to actually learn a little more about all of this and what's happening. So, we're going to try to answer that because there's a lot of questions in there that I'm pretty sure a lot of people that start in the hobby are wondering and don't really know much about. And they are honestly good questions because I would, I was reading the questions and I was trying to put myself in his place, in his shoes, and thinking about how, yeah, if I would be a newbie today with a portable radio, not understanding a thing about what I'm doing and what it's all about, except I saw a video where somebody was listening to the world. Yeah, maybe I would kind of, just abandon at some point. I don't know. Would I have continued? And that's a good question. Also, when I think about it, would I have would have if I had a Texan receiver in my hands, would I continue listening today, not knowing anything, not understanding that whatever is happening is noise, or would I kind of tune around a little bit and think, well, maybe there's no more, or there's nothing to listen to, or the radio I have isn't good, and I don't know. It's a good question because I started a hobby, and I said it a few times. I started a hobby in a time when there's a lot to listen to. So even when there wasn't, even when with a bad radio, I was in the prime, one of the prime times of shortwave, where there was a lot to listen to. Anyways, today you get a radio in your hand and you don't know what you're doing. Already, it's difficult enough to understand, or trying to understand why and where and how to listen to whatever and the frequency ranges where everything is. Because the manuals today, let's face it, radio manuals today are kind of bad. Radio manuals today are crappy. They're not explaining anything. Here's a radio, here are the works, but that's the rest is for you to find out. And there's the internet, and the internet has a lot of stuff that you can actually find of information that you might need, but still, it's a complex thing, going around with all of that and understanding all of it. And so reading his questions put me into the mode of, I'm a newbie today. Would I have abandoned after a couple of days, saying, well, I don't think there's a lot to listen to and this is crap or something? Vodka orange juice. So, I don't know. Kind of interesting. I'm curious by nature. I probably would have listened more than a day or two, but it sure is different today. And not understanding noise and all of that, it's a complex thing, I gotta tell you. It's a complex thing. So Jacob is in Tennessee. He's been watching my videos for a year. He purchased his first receiver 8 months ago. It was the Texan PL 380. Why? Because it was in the budget that he had, and he had seen some videos that I posted with good reception of many stations, and he turned it on, and he could listen to some FM stations. He could listen to some AM stations, but he could not listen to anything on shortwave. And he was hoping that the ETM scan, easy tuning mode, like in my videos, would bring him a certain number of stations. And he scanned, and he scanned, and he scanned. And he said that apart from channels with noise that would sometimes pop up, nothing at all. So he returned the radio, thinking that it was a bad radio that probably had a defect. And when he returned it, he decided to buy something better. And he had seen my video with the XH Data D808. And he thought, well, maybe that one's better. Maybe that's what I should have gotten at the first place to listen. And he turned it on, and he heard FM stations. He heard the airports. He heard AM stations, nothing on shortwave. So he thought, okay, 2 radios out of 2 that has nothing on shortwave. I don't think it's the radio. His own thinking was there's something not right. And he watched a lot of my videos, and he would see that I would receive stuff. And he was thinking, how come that guy gets stations and I don't? And then he came across one of my videos where I was doing videos in the park. And he said it gave him an idea of going away from his neighborhood. And there's a little wooded area where he lives. He went there and put up the wire that is included with the XH data. Started tuning around, and behold, he heard some stations. He heard some stations in Spanish. He heard some stations in languages he didn't understand. And then he heard a few English language stations. And one of the first stations he received, Voice of America. And he was listening to it. And from one of my videos, was amazed to know that at the time he was listening in, he probably was listening in to Voice of America from the Botswana relay on 15580. And so the next day he went back and tuned again. And that's where he understood that in the forest or in the little wooded area, far from houses, he was hearing a lot of stuff. But at home, he was hearing nothing. And he says, thank you for the videos, because without your knowledge and you explaining that if you hear nothing, go in a park, go in a area far from homes, is one of the things you should try, because there'll be less noise, made me understand what you meant. So he's got a series of questions that are very interesting. What's nice about Jacob is he continued. I mean, let's face it, if we look at his experience, just look at his experience. Bought a radio, nothing, returned it. Pretty much everybody that is starting in a hobby would have ended that there. I'm getting my money back. This is a scam. I'm not getting the world. I'm not getting anything. And I don't know why that guy gets all of those stations, but probably it's not like, it's not for me. But he didn't stop there. He bought something better. He thought maybe the radio was defective and he kind of wanted to continue. But imagine the number of people that would have just stopped at that level. So we're going to answer the questions of Jacob in Tennessee and hope that you enjoy these questions. And I think they're going to help out a little bit on some of the newbies out there, all the people that are starting in a hobby tonight. Elizabeth says hello from Regina, Saskatchewan. And we have Robert that's saying hello from Roswell, New Mexico. So it's kind of cool. Today we had a really beautiful day here in Montreal. It was extremely nice. Unfortunately, it clouded over late afternoon, became kind of cool because honestly, it was really, really nice, and spent part of the day outside actually. And as you've seen with the pictures of Paul the cat and the radios, at least, feels good to recharge the batteries with a little bit of sunshine. Last night, went outside, took a walk with the Counticom GP5. So you guys have seen a couple of videos. We'll try to have more of these as time goes by. Hopefully the weather's going to be better and we'll have a little more outings. And one of the things I want to do that I can't wait is the ability to go to Perry Island this summer. So cheers. Okay. Chat room. Mark Hope, nice to have you here from Dallas, Texas. WA5153SWL. Bobby Burgess in Morgan City, Louisiana, USA. New HP laptop. Cool. Always fun to have a new computer. What else do we have? Crittenden Tuttle 4. Nice to have you on board from Oregon, USA. Rick, W8PRR, WHP1390. Nice to have you on board. Main spectrum monitor was posted this afternoon. Yep, I was reading the XH Data D808 review in it. I was curious to see what review it was getting. It seems that it's getting a very good review with a 4.5 out of 5 star rating. And I'm not surprised. I mean, the XH Data D808 is an amazing radio. And it's still number one in my personal list of what radio you should get with SSB. XH Data D808 is amazingly good. Matt, MDK2, nice to have you here from Denver, Colorado. And Scott Cranston, nice to have you here from Massachusetts, USA. Esteban, nice to have you here from the Canary Islands. Pretty cool. Rufus Newt, nice to have you on board from a very pleasant Laurentian Valley, Ontario. Eyebrawler from Arkansas, nice to have you here. Tom DXer, Lower Hudson Valley, New York. Artist Ollie Crafter's Kitchen, nice to have you here from Massachusetts. Loving the new Grundig Satellite 800, cool. Jeff King, nice to have you here. William Helms from Florida. Joe Rodman from rainy Chicago. That's what's coming here. It's supposed to be rainy tomorrow and for a couple of days now. But we should be back to beautiful weather in the weekend. So, Rufus Noon got an email from work asking if I could work when called. Cool. I think slowly but surely things are starting to get back towards a certain normality. Terry Cook, nice to have you on board. Rufus Newt says Paul has too much time in the sun. Of the Dawn, nice to have you on board. Of the Dawn says Paul drank too much coffee. Jerry K, nice to have you here. And he's got a new drink. Did I get a haircut? No, my haircut dates from before the confinement. So I was lucky because I got a haircut like 5 days before they shut down everything. So I'm lucky for that because it was already short. So it doesn't show too much, but it is getting a little longer. But, you know, you guys see me with my hair getting real long. So I don't miss the going out to the barber shop or anything because I just hate going there anyways. Frank Ireland, nice to have you on board, my friend. John McClure, nice to have you here. Keegan, nice to have you here. XN80XR, Northwest Arkansas, 70 Fahrenheit and sunny. Cool. Gaëtan Bellil, bonsoir. Nice to have you here. Toujours un plaisir. Jerry DX, nice to have you on board. Larry P. from Georgia. Vince Perrault, salut Vince de Deux Montagnes. Toujours un plaisir de t'avoir parmi nous. Esteban says he's already have a QRP kit tuned to 7023 kilohertz for Morse code. Listener only at the moment. Now I need a 40 meter antenna. I'm looking at the AH antenna only, 1.3 meter tall. Have you experienced this kind of antenna? Anybody has that antenna and what they think about it? It's difficult, when we start a hobby, and even in amateur radio operations, one of the things that is a tough one is when you can't really put up major antennas. How do you set up and still work the world? That's a tough one. Jerry K, ever have Tito's vodka? It's the best. You should try it. No, I don't believe. Max Headstrong, nice to have you here from Michigan, USA. James Farley from New Jersey. Nice to have you here. Stephen Wood, nice to have you on board from Cape Cod. Medium wave conditions. The Middle East seem good tonight. He's got 891 Algeria, 864 Egypt, 954 Turkey. All at fair levels at 0 UT. That's it when you live next to the ocean. You get all of these stations. RFDXer, nice to have you here from Southeast Colorado. William Moser, nice to have you here. Rick Satter, nice to have you here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Terry Cook is KF7BQ, and no problem. Rifleman 336 from Southwest Ohio, N8UCN. Nice to have you here. What do we have? We have Patrick Manny. Nice to have you here. Long time. Hope you are well, my friend, and staying safe. Mad Reader the Xer says, evening, North America. Morning to fellow Europeans still awake. Nice to have you on board, Mad Reader the Xer. Ben Ismail Messaoud, nice to have you here from Algeria. Pretty cool to have you on board. RFDXers by coincidence, you got a haircut same day as me, except I need to get another one soon. Yeah, well, technically it's getting a little longer, but I think it's not too bad. Mike, WDX50, nice to have you here from Northwest Arkansas. Graham Taplin, nice to have you here, Graham, from Milton, Ontario. Nice to see your posts in the Shortwave group. Artizala Crafter's Kitchen, nice to have you here from Massachusetts. Thank you for your video on Tube Radios. I hope the stories I shared in the Facebook group were helpful to anyone considering one. And yes, you need to visit Massachusetts after virus ends to tune with me. I know. We'll have to arrange that someday. Just to say, I knew that, maybe some people would find some controversy a little bit in what I said. It depends, it's a delicate subject because I know for a fact that there are out there some tube radios that are top-notch receivers. And that I'm sure there are some that are very close to modern radios in sensitivity, selectivity, and so on. I mean, some of them were really expensive for the time, plus the sound quality and all of that. What I mostly wanted to say to people that wanted to purchase one is be careful. It's easy to get, a bad radio, especially when you buy online. It's really easy to get something that, isn't what you should have and could be broken or, these radios for the most part are old. They often were, some of them were in one household and only one. Some of them had changed hands dozens of times. Some people, opened them and some never took care of them. It's a complex issue. We've got to be careful. But when they're well maintained, some of them are totally amazing. RFDXer says, I performed the MLA30 BNC connector mod last week. It is noisier than my Walbrook, probably because of the boost circuit and the bias T. How do you power it? Just out of curiosity. I stopped powering it from my RSP device. It is noisier when it is powered by my RSPDX. So I went back to a power supply on the power inserter. It's actually much better. Less noise. And, for those that make that mod of the BNC connector and all of that, the more I read, the more I see that it actually does nothing. Pretty much no one really seems to see much of an improvement of any kind because it's an amplified signal coming in. It's not like a regular cable from an antenna, a direct antenna. So, when you have a coax from an antenna, it has the signal from the antenna. It's passive. Whatever signal's in there is also going to be mixed up with whatever noise is around it. But the MLA30, like every amplified loop, that signal is amplified. It's already very strong. Everything coming towards in that coax is already strong. There's much less of an effect of any interference around it than it would be with a passive antenna. So unless it's for really the purpose of having it easier because cables are easier to find in some way or whatever, I don't recommend anybody do the modifications on the MLA30. Even the loop itself, I've had a few people say, I modified it, put the copper loop or whatever, and they mentioned that they found some improvement, but the majority of what I've read, there's no improvement. So at some point, you're like, the antenna the way it is, there's not that much. Where maybe there could be something. Some people have tweaked the potentiometer, the amplification circuit itself. Now maybe that could do something, and maybe there could be some improvement there. But for the most part, almost no modifications I've seen seem to help in any way. I'd be curious to see a Wellbrook. I don't have a Wellbrook, so I can't really say anything when comparing the Wellbrook and the MLA30. What I know is that I've read enough of reviews of Wellbrook loops compared to the W6LVP loop, and they seem to say that they are very similar in performance. So I, by association, compare the Wellbrook because I think it probably is the same as the W6LVP loop. And my MLA30 beats my W6LVP loop almost everywhere. There's a few spots where they're the same, a few spots, almost no spots where the W6LVP is actually better, honestly. And the MLA30 Plus is better than the MLA30, so it seems to, some people have mentioned for the powering the MLA30. Some people were mentioning that by feeding the antenna with 12 volts directly, rather than going through the bias T box with 5 volt, and the antenna, of course, it's amplified to 12 volts. It's actually there's a up converter that sends that 5 volt to 12 volt to power the amplifier. Some people say that by giving 12 volts so that it doesn't have to up convert, lower the noise. That's not impossible. I mean, the circuit that up converts could be creating some noise somehow. It's kind of interesting. It's interesting to see all of you guys do modifications and try all sorts of things, because I think that is the fun part of radio, testing out all sorts of things, for sure. Jeff King says, talking about haircuts, I'm starting to look like Cousin It from at the Addams Family. Brian Penny, nice to have you here from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. NID Pirate 6899 upper sideband. Let's check it out. Oh yeah, it's really strong too. 6899, very good here in Montreal. Really good here. James Farley, Olivia on 7115 for decoding. Joe Subda Newhouse, nice to have you here from Brazil. Randy in Riverside, California. James Farley, 6899. USB S9. That's good. Fred Newland, nice to have you here, my friend. Found that big new Texan with 2 speakers for sale today after watching a video on the 3 new models. Be very careful, because they are on some websites being sold. So the big one, the H501 with 2 speakers, I saw it sold something like 649 Canadian dollars plus shipping. So that brings the radio to like $700 or $800 here, which I would not pay. But as you know, the PL 990 and 330 have been seen sold on some websites like AliExpress and stuff like that. And remember, guys, that those are not the production run. and even the shortwave listening post is mentioned a few times. Those are the first models, the first run that they did. They're still not in production. You're not getting the new one. Remember that all three of them are getting upgrades. They're getting firmware upgrades and maybe some hardware changes. Why? Because the first that they did, they looked at the performance and they are tweaking it to have a production run that will have better performance out of them. So if you buy one of those, you're buying the original run, which is not updated and which is not going to be what we will have. And they don't expect any of these radios to be actually available from the official production before this fall. And I even saw something today that actually says that maybe not all three of them will be available. Maybe only one will be actually production run. They might not be doing any production of some of them. And one of them, particularly the H501, is going to be an expensive radio. I mean, who's going to buy, honestly, who's going to buy a $700 Texan receiver? It better really, really be amazingly good because it's going to be compared to a lot of other radios. And if you're at $700 for a big portable, not a lot of big portables are at that price today. They better be good. RF the Xer been powering MLA bias T via laptop PC since the voltage out of the MLA 30 bias T is 12 volts. Then it can be powered with the Walbrook bias T. I haven't tried it yet. Patrick Manny, is there a way to disable the LCD display on the Texan PL 660 to save battery life? The LCD display doesn't take enough energy to save battery life. An LCD display it takes so little power that it has very little impact on battery. Is it because you found that your PL660's battery life isn't as good as you thought, or because honestly, LCD displays take so little energy that's not what's causing any radio doing some battery drain. Honestly, it's like really, really small. Jean-Marc Litz, nice to have you here from Strasbourg, en France. Toujours un plaisir. Stephen Wood, have to walk the dog. No problem. Artist Crafter's Kitchen. There are unboxing and... Whoops. Let me just go back here. Okay. There are unboxing and first look videos on the new Texans out on YouTube now. They do look amazing. Yeah, but once again, like I said, the unboxing and the first look videos are on the original ones, not the production run. None of them are the production run. And that even shortwavelistening.com pretty much confirms there's no production run yet. They haven't even started production. They just did a batch of each, and that's it. Fred Newland. Yes, I still like the MLE 30 Plus better than the original MLE 30. MLE 30. On higher frequencies. On lower frequencies, there's not that much of a difference. But on higher frequencies, absolutely. William Moser, I have a question on the Texan DR920 that you did a review. How is it analog radio if it has a digital reading? I'm confused. That's a good question. So there are two types of radios out there that have a digital reading. Okay. One is the phase lock loop receiver. So they're happy to say that it is a phase lock loop receiver in general. So the phase lock loop receiver uses a circuit that actually compares the frequency with a known standard frequency so that it knows that it's always tuned perfectly. And a PLL radio, what it does, because it's still an analog radio, but it's digital frequency display is not the same. It is driving the radio. So the PLL driven radios drive the radio frequency that you're listening to. They are much more stable also. A PLL radio usually doesn't drift much or at all, or so little that it doesn't really matter. The DR920 is an analog radio. So think about a radio that has a needle. But what they decided to do, because it costs less, because a PLL synthesized receiver costs more to produce, but they still wanted to have a display of the frequency. How do you do it? Now there's a frequency counter. There's a circuit in there that taps into the IF of the radio, the intermediate frequency, and it counts the cycles. So it knows by counting the cycles what frequency you're tuned to. It works. I mean, it gives you a decently accurate receiver frequency, but where it lacks is precision. So depending on the quality of the circuit that is counting the frequency, it can be off. So on a DR920 by ear, I see that it's maybe off by a couple of kilohertz. The other thing is the drifting. Because it's an analog radio, it drifts a lot because there's no locking on the frequency. It's like a radio with a needle. It is dependent on the circuitry around it to stabilize somewhat. So it drifts a little. If you keep the DR920 on a frequency, after half an hour or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you'll see that you kind of have to retune a little bit because it's drifting away. So that's the difference, the two different ways of showing you a frequency. It's either PLL, that's synthesized by a circuit, and it's driving the frequency the radio is tuned to. And it's still an analog radio itself, but it is using digital circuitry to manage the frequency that you're listening. Where the DR920 is of the other kind, which is an analog radio, standard analog radio, like you would have with a little needle. All it has is a little circuit in it with an LCD, and that circuit counts the number of cycles per second in the IF stage. So what it does is it's able to kind of tell you, well, you're tuned to 12,000 kilohertz, but it's not as precise, and it drifts because it's not the same type of circuitry. So cheap radios with digital displays often use that trick. They'll use a frequency counter because it costs less than producing a radio with PLL inside it. Friend of Crows, nice to have you here from Columbus, Ohio. Madrid DXer, the modified MLA30 I did works better than the stock one on long wave and medium wave, but gets more background noise on shortwave. That is why I have two MLA30s. A stock one for shortwave, the modified one for long wave, medium wave. So that's kind of interesting. Madrid DXer says, by the way, I did comparisons between the stock MLA30 and Walbrook antenna, and the difference is closer than I thought. Videos on my channel for those interested. So check out Madrid DXer's videos. But I suspect the MLA30 and the Walbrooks are very close in performance. And that's why I'm having a hard time and cannot recommend anybody buy either a Walbrook or W6LVP because they are expensive, and the MLA30 is so darn amazing for the price. Dan B, nice to have you here from Ohio, and 8WJZ. Eric Cottrell, nice to have you here. Yes, vodka and orange juice. Cheers. RFDXer gets 6899 upper sideband S9 into Southeast Colorado. Joey D, nice to have you on board. I've been going old school with is Zenith Transoceanic Royal D7000Y. Picks up tons of stuff even without an external stick. Cool. Always fun to tune old radios. VT Radio, nice to have you on board from Essex Junction, Vermont. Nice to have you here, Paul, AA1SU. And he's listening to 6899 upper sideband. It's 9 plus 10. Ernie Turner, nice to have you on board from a cold and wet Eastern Australia. Finally see Mr. Paul in the background. Yes. VK3DET, nice to have you on board. What else do we have? Jeff King says, for any tube radio, I only buy from the Radio Attic. They are very meticulous about the radios. Prices can be expensive, but there are some reasonable. Most all have been restored. Esteban. Okay. We have James Farley. Ever thought of getting another R5000? If I'd see one at a very decent price, maybe. But I wouldn't pay too much for one, though. I would not go over 100 for a used R5000. Not with, SDRs now and all of that. And I use, if I look at my ICOM SCRD 500 that is almost unused, I'm kind of not there anymore, I guess. Joey D is waiting for a Royal 3000 on its way. Good conditions. Cool. LCD display stays on when off and eats batteries. But what do you mean by LCD display stays on? I mean, there's a clock there. It's normal. It will always stay on. The LCD display itself does not turn off and will never turn off. And it does not eat batteries on the PL660 like on the PL600. It's too low current. It's something else that's happening. Am I misunderstanding what you mean? Because there's clock and all. It's part of the radio. I have the PL600 and PL680 that are little cousins of the PL660 here. I mean, if I leave batteries in and unused for 6 months, they are still going to work after 6 months. And are you using rechargeable batteries, Patrick? Make sure that they are good quality rechargeables also that keep their charge. Because if I leave alkaline batteries for 6 months, for example, in my PL680 or 600, it's still going to power on and be full scale in 6 months. And the display will display, the clock will be there, which is normal. Because a LCD display it's microamps. It's very, very, very small, the amount of current on an LCD display. So small that you could, that's why a LCD clock can be powered by one AA for years before you need to change the battery. Because the LCD display is just almost doesn't take nothing to be working. Jim F. from Rhode Island, nice to have you here. Hellbilly Musings, nice to have you here from Texas. I didn't even know that some of these Zeniths were making some of these as late as 1981. Wow. Okay. Kind of nice. Crazy. This is crazy. Hubert Major, nice to have you here, my friend. Really cool to have you on board. What else do we have? Marlon da Rocha from Brazil. Yes, XH Data D808 is an amazing receiver. Rob, nice to have you here from Phoenix, Arizona. FDX or vodka and orange juice is good, but I really miss La Résolution beer. It must be a seasonal drink. The problem is where I go, they don't have the beer. They don't have any Unibrew beer that I usually have. and so everywhere it's kind of tough and limited where I could get. So I'm not getting all the beer usual beer. And I do think the Resolution beer is a seasonal one, or was a special one, because it won some of the big beer prizes around the world. Mark Stevens, let's have you here, raining in the North Carolina mountains. Supposed to have a couple of days of rain now. Mickey Dalmage was going through boxes today and found a Sinfo explanation of rating sheet from Radio Canada Shortwave Club. Wow. And we're talking about 1973. Oh, man. Yeah, I remember some places add actually Sinfo and Simpo, depending on where you would send reports. It has nothing to do, Patrick, with the LCD display. Something's just not right. There must be something wrong with your radio, because LCD display does not take enough power for that. And so when you're using regular batteries, reset the radio. It's as if something, and make sure that when you store it, by the way, Patrick, that it's not depressed against something, because it could be turning on by itself. Make sure that the alarm is not on, because that radio can be turning on by itself because of the alarm. So if the volume's down, you don't even notice, but the radio turns on. So these are a few things to check. Make sure that it isn't squeezed when you put it somewhere, because sometimes by pressing, you can press the power button or press the light button and have the light go on. I would also I would kind of reset it in case something weird is happening with it. And what you could try is also use, there's the lock key, where you can actually press the lock key, which locks the keypad. And when they're locked, well, if it gets the press against something, it can't turn on or anything, because it really isn't the LCD display. LCD displays don't take enough power for, especially if you put alkaline batteries. That LCD display will still work in 3 years with alkaline batteries. It takes so little power. There's something else happening here. Make sure it's not turning on because you've set an alarm without knowing it. It's easy to do that. It's easy to see that the alarm is set. Make sure that in the display where there's the little icons for the alarms, that there's not one that's turned on. And so, when you start it, the radio turns on, you don't know. And when you come back to it, well, the battery's dead because it's been on for 3 days. Make sure that you look at all of this, because weird. It's really weird that it does that. It's not a known, there's a couple of radios out there. The County-Con GP5 is one, that are known to drain batteries fast when not in use. But the PL660 is not one of them. Shady Pyro 90, nice to have you on board. Ehab, do you think connecting the MLA30 to the TIVDO V115 will improve the medium wave reception? No, because the TIVDO 115's medium wave reception is done with the internal ferrite. So for most radios, an MLA30 will not give you better or improved medium wave, because the antenna connectors for most of them do not interact with the external antenna. So there will not be an improvement of any kind on the TIVDO V115. What else do we have? Ehab is in Brussels. Let's have you here. XH Data D808 is known to be one of the best portables for medium wave. Actually, the review and the spectrum monitor of the month of May the guy that reviews it is a big medium wave um, fan, and bought the XH data because he's seen another medium wave DXer saying that it was pretty good on medium wave, and he's impressed with it. The D808 has a bigger ferrite than most other portables of little portables. So it's definitely better, and it's definitely better anyways because you'll have single sideband and so on. You can't really compare the Texan 310 ET and D808. D808 is definitely a much better radio. Patrick says, I've had radios I did not use for 6 months and the batteries were still good. It should be the same on the PL660. Like I said, make sure that the you haven't set without noticing it an alarm with the radio turning on and you don't notice it. Matt, hate too much. Same here. I had cannellonis with some rosé sauce and garlic bread. I feel like all jammed up in here. Mark Stevens, LCD displays, rock has do LiPo batteries 18650 and my PL 880. Weeks of use before swapping a fresh battery. Well, they're both really good. Warland, the Russia, the XH data are really well. But by going directly to the XH data D808, you're going directly to a radio that can do single sideband and already top notch. So if you're thinking of buying one or the other, buy the XH data D808 straight away. Howie WA3MCK, nice to have you here. Patrick says, thanks. So I'll check about the alarm next to my bed and do not notice it turning on by itself. Yeah. And reset. There's a reset hole. Try to reset it. Maybe there's some kind of just a little glitch, electronic glitch. And when you will reset it, it's going to kind of put things back to zero. I had a weird glitch today. I took out my Grundig G5. So you guys saw the picture with Paul the Cat here. And when I put the batteries in, instead of having, it was so weird. Instead of having the clock display, it was like Greek letters. It was weird. It really, really looked weird. I looked at it and it's like, wow, that looks like Greek lettering or something. And I had to actually reset the Grundig G5 in order for it to actually power back on. It happens sometimes. What else do we have? What else do we have? The extras got 5,000 kilohertz WWVS9 plus 20, 5085 WTWW, which, by the way, in a few minutes should have Ham Nation show, I believe. Simplio, nice to have you here. Pretty cool. The Xers got 6070 CFRX. Cool. Simplio says medium wave reception was good last night. Last morning was hearing KFTI 1070 Classic Country in Wichita, Kansas. Propagated here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Cool. Matt says, I mailed off a handful of QSL cards for overseas hams, and I'm not sure when any of them will be delivered. I had a Jamaica-bound one given back to me because they've suspended service there. Yeah, I guess there's still some postal services around the world that are still stopped. There's one thing. I've ordered a few things from China in the past month, And there's one that is still not shipped after a month. And it's I got an email yesterday from the vendor saying, look, I'm really sorry about your package still not being mailed. But in his little area of China, the post office was still shut down. And he said, I can refund you if you want, but if you really want it, hang in there. As soon as it's open, I'm going to put that box in the mailbox. I'm going to mail it to you. And it was like, so it seems that it's not totally everywhere that it's opening up somewhat slowly, but it's not open everywhere. Madrid the Xer, XH did at the 808 and Texan AN 200. Excellent medium wave performance. Shitty Pyros has got an email from Poland saying that there's a delay in the delivery of the Curacao card that they are sending to me, so got to be patient. So, oh man, you got to get that AN 200. It's not very expensive, and it's really, really amazing. The Texan AN 200, which is the loop that you guys see right here, that loop here is the Texan AN 200. Every time I use it, I am amazed at how better signals are. It improves any portable so much, so much. You'll get a signal that on the portable is listenable, and it's going to bring it to a level where it's almost like a local station. It's crazy. Jeff, K85 QDO, nice to have you on board from Texas. Howie, WA3MCK says, thanks, been medium wave and shortwave DXing since 1969. Cool. Thank you very much, my friend. Nice to be here. What else do we have? Paris says, this morning I heard channel 38 lower sideband was locals. Can hear the one that was talking, but didn't hear the other person. I told you guys a few times, but I have a gang of local CBers on channel 16 lower sideband. They're there almost every night, and man, it's really, 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 really nice to have some good conversations with these guys. Are amazingly nice in conversations, technical conversations, better than most hams that I hear on the bands. And it's fun because almost every night they are there. And I wish I had a single sideband CB to answer back, because they're really interesting, and I love listening to them. When I don't know what to listen to, sometimes I go up there and check out if they're on, and when I hear them, I just leave the radio on that frequency. What else do we have? Orlando Rocha, can you tell me about the Degen 1103 DSP? So what I understand is, and that's most of what I've seen, is the updated DSP version doesn't perform as well as the original 1103 analog and 1103. Most of what I've read is really disappointing about the DSP version. So I would probably think of, I would probably, buy something else and think about something else rather than that radio. James Farley, Ethon satellite with RDS killed my battery. Turn it off. Some radios, there are some functionalities in some radios that they're not all equal. Battery life isn't all equal on every battery. Some actually really take a lot more power when actually working, when you're using it, than some others. I've a lot of radios here, a lot of them that I keep the batteries in for long times. What I would say is that there are a few models, and the Conicom GP5 is one. that for some reason takes a lot of power when it's turned off. And to give you guys an idea, I forgot alkaline batteries in it. My Conicon GP5 I used last night. I forgot fresh new alkaline batteries in it. The reason I used alkaline is because when I needed to use it a couple of months ago, I didn't have any rechargeables available. They were all inside some of the radios. So I took out 3 AA's alkaline, and I thought, when I finish with it, I'm going to remove the batteries and keep them out of the radio. And I forgot. So yesterday when I went to the DXpedition, the first thing is I turned it on because I knew that it could have, bad batteries. And when I looked, I thought I totally had forgotten. I thought I had rechargeables in them. So that's why I don't care, because rechargeables, if they drain out, you just recharge them back. But when I opened it, I said, oh, darn, they're alkaline. I just screwed and wasted 3 alkaline batteries, So I don't know why it actually drains so much that it actually, makes the batteries drain fast. But for me, that's a defect. It's not a good radio when something like that happens. One of the radios that might be doing that also is the RadiWow R108. A couple of you have been telling me that their RadiWow's battery would drain fast when not used, and after testing it out here, it seems that it's possible that it actually does that. It's not that it's because it comes with a battery inside that it's rechargeable. But what's sad when that happens, and especially for the RadiWow, is that you got to recharge it before you use it. If it actually you forget it and it's just not working, Oh man. Olympic 65, Bob, Northeast Ohio. Please repeat antenna recommendation and cost. So the MLA30 Plus loop antenna, MLA30 Plus loop antenna is, it's difficult to have anything better, and it's roughly 40-ish US dollars shipping included from China. And it's amazing antenna. If you use it with portables, you will need adapters because it has an SMA connector, which is not what most radios use, though. That's for sure. One of the things you got to be careful on some radios, like Keegan was talking about the backlight. One of the things I noticed on some radios that you got to be careful, I got a few Ethon radios that actually do that. Remember that there are a few radios out there that for some weird reason, the C Crane, the original big C Crane Shortwave is one of them. When you press the button for the backlight to stay on, when you turn off the radio, the backlight stays on. Now that will really drain your batteries. If the XR live lightning map shows line thunderstorms in Gulf of Mexico and over Oregon and Idaho, affecting reception tonight. Not too much here. I don't see. The other night there was a lot of static crashes. Tonight it seems pretty quiet, so it's not too bad. So WTWW with some music, 5085. $6925, strange signal. Oh yeah, it's very weird. I'm hearing it too, Matt. 6925. It's like very weirdish, electronic-ish. And there's some talk, but it's not very strong. There's something weird on 6925, that's for sure. So there is something on 6925. Butterbean, does anybody make an SMA to 3.5 millimeter? I've seen somebody advertise a cable that did it, but for the most part, most of the people I've seen use two adapters. One that is SMA to SO39 and PL259 to 3.5 or something like that. Or there's another alternative with the F connector. So two connectors together. Ari, nice to have you here. KD9FCZ from Illinois. I'm just on the other side of the room. So the SDR is on that side. I'm just on this side, which is the side with the portable analog radios and the analog radios and stuff and the pirate flag. It's just I haven't been on this side for a while. Usually what I was doing is I was on the this side on the Wednesday and on the other side on the Friday. That's how I would do usually. No, it's not Stanag here too, Matt. It's some kind of weird. It's part of the pirate signal. I'm pretty sure. It's part of the pirate signal. It's very weird. Some kind of electronic weird thing. I'm just gonna check out here what the HF underground. So here it says an ID 6925 USB/AM. You know what? I don't know. It sounds very, very weird. I'm sure that sound is part of that pirate. It's the way that pirate does it. Yeah, it's very strange signal. Gustavo Pinto, nice to have you here. Nicky Dalmich says 6925 is making it into here, Alberta, but too much static. Frank Ireland, is there any difference between the Texan AN 100 and 200? I have an AN 100 and it's great for AM. The difference is that the 200 has a tuning knob. You actually tune the loop to the frequency you're tuned to, where I believe the AN 100 doesn't have a tuning circuit. It's just improves, but it doesn't have. Just check it out here. It's an AN 100. 100. Or it does. Wait, let me check it out here. There is a difference. I know that. Oh, it's the connector, maybe. Let me just check it out here. Yeah, because it does have that tuning too. And this is the AN. Oh, yeah, it says long wave loop. Let me check it out here. I'm a little curious here. So the AM loop from Texan one. Okay. Well, maybe it doesn't have, because it has a tuning. Oh, this is interesting. The AN 100. Yeah, I think. Check the other side. No, it has that cable too. I'm not sure now. What's the difference? Diameter, operations. Yeah. Good question. I'm not sure. Actually, what difference there is between the AHAN 100 and 200. Except I see the design is slightly different. I remember seeing something about a difference, but now I'm not sure anymore. Graham, K180WLA has arrived at Toronto Airport, so hopefully shall be seeing it soon. Yeah, mine is on its way. I don't know when I'm going to be getting it. I'm waiting for it to arrive in my mail any day now. So it's going to be interesting to test. Joseph Fickenbaum, nice to have you here. Nothing much on 6925 in the Bay Area, California. Simply you're not hearing anything on 6925. Rufus Newt, 6925, barely above the noise. Yes, the AN200 and Kato and Texan AN200 are exactly the same thing. It's just the Texan or Kato brand that's different, but they are exactly the same thing. Mark Cope as WRNO, stronger than usual on 7505. Shitty Pyro 90 has nothing on 6925. Yeah, there was a brief over the horizon radar on 6925. So I don't know. What's the difference, Frank Ireland, actually. They seem to be pretty close in what they are, but there must be some difference. I need to find out. Howie, WA3A MCX is always suspicious of pirates that appear and then reported during shortwave shows. Well, there's pirates all the time. And a lot of them lately, actually. What else do we have? What else do we have? Anything else? Well, in the road show, what maximum distance can I capture airband? It depends what you're listening to. If you're listening to the airport tower, ground wave is going to make it. 30, 40, 50 miles at best. If you're listening to the planes in the air, that can really go far. Planes in the air, because they're very high, you can typically hear an airplane 100 miles away. It depends really on terrain and, if it's a plane or the airport you're listening to and so on. Old Radio Man, who is the seller of the MLA 30 Plus? Say hi to Paul. Hello, Paul. Sleeping like a little baby. Mark Cope has 6920 lower sideband possible. Beskies. My seller of MLA 30 Plus and is, I shared the link here. I go to my eBay. I was going to go to my eBay. I need to check more than 60 days. 2020. And so here is the guy behind my purchase. And he has only MLA 30 Plus. And from what I understand, by the way, is that almost anybody selling the MLA 30 now sells the MLA 30 Plus. It's kind of the replacement. Rifleman 336 VHF airband at 40,000 feet. Can be heard up to 400 nautical miles away. You can hear airplanes from very far away, absolutely. Papa Krampus, nice to have you here. Says mine MLA 30 Plus seller was thanks buyer hobby. That's the same one that I have. That's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. Bobby Burgess going to get the MLA 30 and SDR player as P1A. I think you're going to be happy. It's a nice combination. So, Icadarius, nice to have you here. I'm going to answer some questions from our friend Jacob that I talked at the beginning of the show. Jacob has sent a list of questions that he's wondering because he was not receiving a lot of stuff and he was going a little crazy. Sorry, guys. And so he's got questions from his experience with radio that we're going to answer a little bit here. So first question that he has is when he's listening to something, he doesn't know how and where to go to actually know and check out what he's listening to. And so where do I get my schedules? Because, he says that when he watches a live show, he sees me going to the schedules all the time and finding out what station. So I would guess, the easiest place to go is if you go on a PC or a tablet, short-wave.info. I'm going to put this website in the chat here. And the reason why is because of its interface. I think for most people that are not used to we're not used to schedules, because I use the IBI space schedules, but I like lists and I know how to go into that list and understand what will be the possibilities of what I'm listening to or not. Here you just enter the frequency and it's going to tell you what's on a specific time. Now there are often more than one station on a lot of the frequencies. So what you got to understand when you do that is look at the list. It tells you the language. It tells you the target area, where it's broadcasting to. These are helpful in understanding what you are listening to. So if there's more than one station, language is probably the number one thing that makes it easy, because it doesn't happen very often that two stations will be in the same language. Most of the time, stations will have different languages. So if you understand and know what language you're listening to, you're already, a step ahead, because you just look at what language and match the language, and you know that you're listening to that. And be careful about one thing that I see very often in the Shortwave Facebook group, that I see often in reporting also. Make sure that you're on the right frequency. A lot of people post, hey, I'm listening to something on 11855 in Spanish, and I don't see any listing. And you look at the video, for example, they post, and you're like, oh, well, you're on 11860. You're not on 11855 in reality. That's Radio Marti, for example. Just make sure that you use the bandwidth, the smaller bandwidth, to make sure that you're not thinking you're on a frequency when in reality you're just next to it. But language is your best friend, because it rarely happens that two stations are the same language on the same frequency. So kind of, gives you immediately the idea of what it is. But I think that is one of the best ways. If you have a Android tablet or phone, just out of curiosity, there's an app that you can use, and it's Skywave Schedules. Skywave Schedules is really nice because Skywave Schedules will give you the ability to, on your phone or tablet, to immediately check what you're listening to. So, for example, let's say that I'm listening to something in English on 6,000 kilohertz, which I already know is Radio Havana, Cuba. But let's say for the purpose of this video, I have no idea what it is. It's in English and it's on 6,000 kilohertz. Well, you can actually just go type 6,000 kilohertz, and of course it says what's on the air now. So you can check it out and say, okay, search, and it's going to give you what is Radio Havana, Cuba in this list of station. What else? So you can choose by broadcast station. You can also get schedules. It's very important to make sure that you update the list of frequencies. You've got all the schedules in there. Skywave Schedules is a very nice app. It's free, and it works really, really good in identifying stations. Another question is about why is it that when I scan from one end to the other of the frequency range of my radio manually, I do this regularly. 80% of all the frequencies I listen to have nothing on them. So the shortwave spectrum, is big. It's 3 megahertz to 30 megahertz. That big chunk of frequency, there's a lot of space in it. It's normal that there's a lot of space with nothing on it. It doesn't mean there's nothing when you're tuning a frequency. It's not because you're tuning a frequency that there's nothing there. It might just be that where you live at the time you tuned, there was nothing that you could hear, but somewhere else around the world, that frequency might be packed with some signal of some sort. So it's all a mix of time that you tuned, and the region of the world you're tuning, and so on. If you look at the list of utilities, a list of all sorts of things that are available on the shortwave bands, you notice that a big chunk of the spectrum is populated with something. But when you're in the international broadcast bands, you got broadcasts at specific times. On amateur bands, you've got amateurs that are going to transmit randomly. Some frequency ranges work in the daytime, some in the nighttime. All of that, plus a lot of the utility signals aren't always on. They are there randomly at, depending on what you're listening to. For example, you might go over 11175 30 times when you're scanning, thinking there's never nothing there. But in reality, the U.S. Global Command is there on 11175 with the EAM messages. It's just that every time you're going by, they're not talking. It's like amateur radio. You might be listening to a frequency for 10 seconds, think nobody's there, but in reality, there's a conversation. Maybe you're hearing one end of that conversation, but you're not hearing all of the conversation. So, it all depends on what is what you're listening to, and what time and what frequency, and it's a complex thing. Knowing exactly what is on a frequency and why am I not hearing anything at a given time. There's a big chunk of those frequencies that absolutely have really nothing on them. Even a utility frequency. Some utility frequencies will have nothing on them 80% of the time, 90% of the time. But 10% of the time, there's something. But you can imagine that when 90% of the time there's nothing, you got more chances of going over it with nothing than when there's something. Especially when you don't know when they're broadcasting or if it's random broadcasts. Unable to get clear voices with SSB mode. So he's saying that he watched some of my videos where I tune utility signals and amateur radio signals, and he's yet to find a clear voice. He says that he hears what sounds like single sideband, but he can't tune it and get a decent voice. So you're using an XH Data D808, which makes it a little easier to tune in, but you've got to follow some basic rules. First of all utility signals are USB, upper sideband. If you are on the amateur band, remember that below 10 megahertz, it's lower sideband. Above 10 is upper sideband. There's an exception in the 60-meter band, but for the most part, that works. So make sure that you're in the proper upper-lower sideband mode. One thing that I had seen from one of my viewers that sent me an email a couple of months back, and it says, I don't know, I received some conversations on single sideband, but others that I don't. And I asked him if he could send me an example or tell me what frequency he was trying to tune. And that's where I noticed that when he pressed that button to go into single sideband, he had no idea there was an upper and a lower sideband. So he was always an upper. And he was trying to tune AMs in 40-meter band, and he couldn't because it wasn't in lower. And I told him, well, you're in the wrong mode. There's LSB, not just USB. And he came back to me and says, wow, his comment was like, yeah, I look dumb. I didn't understand that there was a lower sideband also on that button, And it's like, well, you're not dumb. You just didn't know, it's not written, you don't learn that in school, that upper and lower sideband exist. I'm pretty sure that you don't even know in school what single sideband is, So, it's easy to mess up, and it's easy to, not understand part of our hobby. And imagine when it's like that, it's just crazy. What else do we have? Jay Watterson 69. Nice to have you here, my friend. Scott Robson, nice to have you here. K6AOS, nice to have you here. RFDXer 6925 upper sideband pirate is S7 in the southeast Colorado. So kind of interesting. Warren de Russia, what is your favorite radio? There's a lot of close calls. On a lot of the radios that I have, there's a lot of close calls. I would say that one of my favorite portable receivers is still the Grundig G5. But I've learned to love and use a lot the XH Data D808. I just love that. Just crazy. And there's a lot of nice radios out there. I mean, I have a lot of radios that I just find cool. I find it interesting. I got out the Texan receivers, the Texan PL600, PL680. It's nice because they haven't, they hadn't been used in a while. And I always pride myself in saying to everybody that of all the radios that I've got here on the shelf, I rotate. And of course, every radio gets used at some point during the month or the weeks or whatever. Because I hate having a radio on the shelf that's never being used. And the Texan PL600 was with the Texan PL680, two radios that I had not tuned for a while. And it was fun. I found it cool to tune them again and to kind of get back with them, get acquainted again with these radios. It was kind of fun. So, it's really, really cool. Tina Smith, my boyfriend wants to know if you have an email He has a Cobra Superstar 3600. Do you have an antenna? And do you use FM on sideband? So we don't have FM here because FM is not a mode in CB in North America. And I have a 102-inch CB antenna that's unused right now that would have a good use for a CB radio that has single sideband, that's for sure. So anyways, anybody that has radios, CB radios, you want to donate a single sideband capable CB radio, official shortwave radio at gmail.com. Just send me a little, hey, I got a CB for you if you want, or a radio of any kind. If anybody out there has a radio that they don't use anymore, don't want anymore, they want to send it, let me know. And, you can even let me know how much the shipping charges if if it's a little expensive to send it to me. For anything that's worth it, I'll be happy to refund the shipping charge if you want to send me something. Artist Ali Crafter's Kitchen, been typing in the frequency I'm listening to into Google, and it brings up results from shortwave.info. Yeah, you can do that also. I mean, I've often, look, you know what? On utility signals, there's a lot of frequencies that you're like, what is that? And what I do is I Google, okay, 6946 upper sideband, digital mode, or upper sideband, whatever, voice, and often you get utility logs from people on different websites that show up, and it's like, oh, this is that type. I don't know how many civil air patrol nets I found just by Googling the frequency. So, Matt says the big exception to that rule, the one about language, is when hearing a Mandarin language broadcast, because it's much more likely to be jamming than a broadcast listening via the schedules. Yeah, of course, there's that's possible, but let's, for the purpose of being at the basic level here, let's just put it at the basic level, because yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I've seen so many people log is, Radio Free Asia in Mandarin. I'm sorry, man, but that was the CNR1 jammer, which is 90% of the time the CNR1 jammer before anything else, because China jams everything. Not that you cannot, not that you cannot listen to, Radio Free Asia and stuff like that. But chances are, yeah, it's possibly more of a jammer than anything else. Man. What else do we have? 6925. Let's check it out here. Anything over here? Not hearing anything here on 6925. Madrid the Youngster says Paul is dreaming. His tail was shaking. Well, that's possible. That's possible. He's sometimes I hear him do weird noises, and I see him, like, I see his paws move, and it's like, oh, he's dreaming of something. He's dreaming of something, that's for sure. Stephen Wood, the intermittent audio over static from Zambia, 5915. I've got nothing on 5915. Oh yeah, I got a signal. I got a really weak signal. There's a very weak signal here on 5915 here. Very, very, very weak signal. And it's not even strong enough for me to hear any audio that I could ID anything, for sure. So, and if you're hearing African music, then it's interesting, because it's a irregular broadcast. So it's nice to see that it might be on tonight. At 05 UT, it's in English. So nothing else. What does he have here? Myanmar radio, which I don't think that could be. And at this time, nothing else really on 5915. Huh, interesting. Seems that it's possible that Zambia is on, especially if you have African music. Terry Cook says some of us sound weird even in person. Yeah, I guess. Oh, man. Welcome back, Hubert Major. Simply, I would pay shipping for a Radio Shack 2000629 that has a clean case with all of its lettering and not rubbed off. Also need the tubing encoder bolt. Lost mine when it fell off. Oh, man. Matt says better than false RFA Mandarin reports are false Sound of Hope reports. Oh yeah, those are even worse because Sound of Hope. Has anybody ever heard Sound of Hope? I'm not even sure. And I mean, they have dozens of frequencies. One of the biggest problems also that I noticed, because one of and I think it's, you mean 4055 RFDXer 4055. No, Gaetan, what you're hearing on 5915, if it's in English, is not, because it can be 1010. 5915 is very weak here. What you're listening to probably is 5920. If it's in English, it's 5920. That I would guess, because 5915 is very weak. I doubt you're getting 5915 1010. Are you? What does it sound like, Gita? Because it's so weak here that I have a hard time thinking you're getting 5915. What is the English? Yeah, okay, but it's not in English right now. So 5915 is not. You're not hearing Zambia, because Zambia is in English only at very specific moments, and it's not right now. And here it's almost impossible. What radio are you using, Gita? Just out of curiosity. Because the closest right now is 5935 WWCR, real strong. Are you hearing a woman's voice, Gita? Are you hearing a woman's voice? Just out of curiosity. Okay, you're off frequency. That means you need to. She just said the heart of Abraham. If you're listening to 5935, so you're listening to 5935, which is very strong. That means that your calibration is wrong in your software. So that means you will need to calibrate your RSP1A and SDR Uno to be on the correct frequency. Your 20 kilohertz off. It happens on some RSP1As. And what you have to do is go and calibrate within SDR Uno. So you're probably off frequency, or your RF gain is too high, because what you're hearing is 5935 WWCR. So you will need to use calibration in the software. Yeah, Gita, it's not the first time I hear some people that use the RSP1A or RSPDX and that are off frequency. There's a few people that I've seen post, and I said, no, you're on the wrong frequency. It's not right. And they say, well, I got the RSP1A or I got the RSPDX. And it's a question of calibrating the frequency within SDR. The best that you could do, a guitar, is to tune WWV 5, 10, or 15 megahertz. So if you're off by 20 kilohertz on 5935, you're probably going to be off on WWV frequencies also. What you need to do is calibrate an SDR Uno to bring the frequency to what you're listening to. So WWV is a good one because you always know that it's perfectly on a specific frequency. No, it has nothing to do with the antenna. It's really just in the software, you need to correct. So WWV is the time signal, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 kilohertz. You'll at some point hear at least one. Let me just try 5,000 here for curiosity. Actually, it's pretty good right now on 10,000. So if you tune 10,000, do you hear WWV? Because it's coming in quite well here, so you should hear it in Saint-Sophie. It's there also on 5,000, but it's weaker in 5,000. So what you could do is go on 10,000 and see if you hear it. If you don't, look at the SDR at the waterfall. Do you see a signal nearby? Click on it and see if you're listening to the time signal. And that is one of the best frequencies to actually change or correct. You can actually, I think, let me just check it out here. So when you're tuning 10,000, so what you could try, so in the main frequency panel in SDR Uno, once you tune WWV, you can try one thing. There's settings on the upper left of that little window. And at the end of that window, there's CAL, which is calibration. You can use that to auto-calibrate. But you will need to calibrate. You're probably off a little bit. And it's not a defect. It's just that in the software, you have to tell SDR Uno, okay, no, that's the wrong frequency. You got to adjust it so that it's always on frequency. Once you'll set it once, you don't need to set it again. It will always be okay. I've seen a few people that happened. So you're not alone. I never had to calibrate on my devices here, but I've seen people that they had to. And once you have calibrated, you're fine. Everything's all right. Like I said, it's not a defect or anything. And it has nothing to do with the antenna. Matt says exactly what I almost said. Has anyone ever really copied Sound of Hope? Matt Really the Extra says, me never heard Sound of Hope, and I think they only have 0.1 kilowatt of power, so almost impossible to be heard outside Asia. I would guess, yeah. That's what I would guess. Hunter's Alley Crafter says someone in my city selling a Grundig RTV 340 with matching speakers from 1969. 2 shortwave bands, AM, FM. Looks amazing. He's asking 150. I keep telling myself no more radios. You know it doesn't work. You can't tell yourself no more radios. But check it out, Gaetan. Once you've said it, it's going to be okay. Okay, so you hear 10,000 perfectly well. Oh, then check another thing, Gaetan. When you're on 5915, what's the bandwidth setting when you're in AM? Let me try something here. 5915. You're maybe too large. Make sure that you're not set more than 8,000 or 6,000 in bandwidth. So if you hear 10,000 perfectly well on 10,000, then 5915 should be okay. But you should not be hearing. It could be the low frequency that's set wrong. You know, try something, Gaetan. So with the frequency you're tuned right now, with your mouse pointer, click next to the frequency you're tuned to so that it will move your frequency. And tune again 5915. Do you still hear the English women, or it's back to normal? Because maybe that was also the other problem. Because if you're hearing 10,000 perfect, then it's calibrated. What else do we have? What else do we have? Mouthful Man 336, just crack open a Lennon Krugel, pronounced Lennon Kugel's summer shandy brewed with flavor of real lemon and honey. Cool. That's cool. Restart your, if the audio is delayed, Shady Pyro, just refresh the page. Then you're okay. One of the things, Gaetan, that you got to be careful with the RSP1A and RSPDX is spurious signals. It happens that some signals are on a frequency where there should not be. So the best way to fix it is just click next to the frequency you're tuned to, tune another frequency, and come back. Most of the time that goes away. I've noticed that happens from time to time, especially if you push the RF gain very high. It's one of those awkward things of the RSP devices. So now you're okay. So it's not calibration. It was just, it was showing up as a spurious signal on 5915. So cool. Fixed. And now 5935 is very strong. Yep. That's WCR in Nashville, Tennessee. Cool. Another question here is about, so he's got an example. He was listening to a station that he received on 13840 in English, and he says it was around 03 UTC. Now, he says it was coming in quite clear, and he tried the next day, and it's not there anymore. And 13840 is Radio New Zealand at that time. So he's wondering, why is it that it was gone, and then a few days later it came back? It wasn't as strong as the first time. Is something wrong with my antenna, my radio, so, it's propagation. Especially on that frequency. You're listening to a signal that's from New Zealand, Radio New Zealand. So that's far away, and that's very dependent on propagation. So some nights it might be in, some nights it might not be there, some nights it might be very weak. It is part of shortwave propagation, and you'll see that on many radio stations you listen to. It might be very strong one night or strong for a couple of days. Then suddenly one day you try to tune it and it's really weak. That's propagation. It's the ionosphere is an always changing thing. So basically, depending on solar activity, geomagnetic activity, and so many other things, it might be changing all the time. No problem, Gaetan. Happy to help out. Evan Tinney, nice to have you here. Yep, it's Melissa Scott, preacher on WWCR. LSW UK, nice to have you on board from Cambodia. Cool. Kadarius, I won't be on the live stream next Wednesday night. There will be a 2-hour episode of Survivor. It's that time again. Survivor. Absolutely. Radio New Zealand is a good DX, honestly. A very good DX catch for sure. Simply says, I know how that feels when propagation is so low. Makes me think radio and antenna is bad, but I have a few radios and they all agree. So then I think, yep, it's propagation, especially after midnight. I always have that story of when I was a teen, and this is the first radio I had, the DX100 right here. And I didn't know anything about propagation at all. And, when you're new to the hobby, you think that what you're getting is like AM radio or FM radio. It's always there. You don't think about, there are changes in propagation. And I still remember it's funny for, today you think about it, it's funny, but, I didn't know anything back then. So I set up a super long wire outside. And I'm not with this anymore. I'm actually tuning with the realistic DX302 with digital display. And I get Voice of Korea, which is today KBS World Radio. And Radio Korea, sorry, not Voice of Korea. Radio Korea, which today is KBS World Radio in South Korea. 15575. Coming in super well. I still remember making a reception report, sending it in. It was my first QSL from South Korea. Next day, I listened to it. It's there. It's okay. Then I tune it another day, and it's very weak. And I'm like, whoa, what's wrong with my radio? It was always good. Then that's 2 days. Now it's weak. And so I take down the 100 feet of wire. I'm sure something's wrong with it. Maybe it broke somewhere because I threw it too hard, or, I just don't know. And I go and buy new wire, and I, throw out that new wire, and I have a super long antenna with, brand new wire, and I'm convinced it's the wire or something. And the next day, I tune in, and it's super strong, and I'm like, oh, the wire was broken. The wire was broken. And it's super strong. The next day, it's bad again. And I'm like, what is happening to my wires? Am I going to have to buy wire every week? I don't understand. What I'm not understanding, actually, is that it's propagation. Propagation is not making the signal direct from South Korea. Always good. But, it's like, I have no idea. I just don't know what I'm doing. So, so my wire was broken. So anyways, later you learn things like that, and you're like, okay, propagation. I think the first time I read about propagation was when Radio Netherlands had a little booklet. They actually had many booklets, and that was nice of them. And one of them was shortwave radio propagation or something. And I think I was listening to one of their mailbag shows or a show, and I heard them say, "Hey, we got tons of booklets of all sorts of things," and one was shortwave radio propagation to understand how shortwave works and all of that. And I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be cool. I learned how shortwave works. That's a good idea." And I got that booklet, and I think that's when I started understanding. Oh, okay. My wire isn't broken. Propagation changes with solar activity and all of that. And I think that was my first time I've actually heard about, the solar cycle and sunspots and how all of that actually, goes in the reception of shortwave signals and so on. But when you don't know it, you don't know it. And that's part of knowledge. That's part of knowledge. Denny Putskin, nice to have you here. Newbie question: is it true that the longer your antenna, the better, or can it be too long for reception? Gets worse. In a way, basically, just think of shortwave as the shortwave frequencies are very long in bandwidth in meter band. So the wavelength of shortwave frequencies is very big. So in general, you can almost never have too long of a wire in general. So when somebody asks me how long a wire I should put out, I always say the longest possible. You'll be okay. Yes, you can technically have too long of a wire and it will be bad. That exists too, because the way radio waves work is that they resonate. Your antenna, in reality, kind of resonates with the frequency you're tuned to. And of course, there's a frequency that your antenna is the best at. They sell these devices that you can actually plug your antenna on, and it's going to tell you, oh, this antenna is good at 14 megahertz. That means that's where it's going to be the best. There will be a time when your wire could be technically too long, and that means it's not going to be better. It might even degrade if you're too long. It's possible. The longer the wire, technically, the lower the frequencies it'll be good at. Because wavelength is longer and longer as you go lower in frequency. But for the purpose of shortwave listening, there's not a lot of people that can actually string out a wire that is too long, because most of us have constraints of you don't have a continent in front of you, so you're not going to put out 3,000 feet of wire. But yes, there is such a thing as too long and getting worse reception because it's too long. Yes, absolutely. It doesn't resonate well with the frequency you're listening to. Shelly, nice to have you here. That's another thing. Like Simplio says, Simplio uses 10 foot of wire because radio's overload. That is a different thing also. Especially with portable radios. Big gun tabletops are usually better at, holding on to very long wires and strong signals. Portable receivers, that's a different story. It's possible for a portable radio to overload. And when you actually put out more wire, a longer antenna, for the most part, you are, as the wire gets longer and longer, getting more and more signal. So that's a different story because it can technically overload the receiver. Mickey Delmage 5915 here is weak and through summer static, a male voice almost like breaching gray line between Zambia and Alberta and a few hours away. We'll see. That's interesting. So you're hearing, I'm getting something, but it's not. It's very weak, very weak. I barely see a trace in the water and in the waterfall of DSDR here on 5915. Seems to be a little stronger than it was maybe when I started tuning in. I can actually hear a voice now. You know what? I'm going to stay tuned. I'm going to stay tuned to that frequency a little bit. Kind of interesting here to see that it's coming in. And I've got a decent signal from Radio New Zealand that we were talking about. Radio New Zealand, 13840. Peaking at S9, S9 plus 10 right now here. 13840, Radio New Zealand. That's a good catch here in North America since it's all the way around the world. Time pips right now. So Radio New Zealand, 13840. This one, especially here in the East, should actually get better in the next hour, hour and a half. You guys on the West Coast probably hear 13840 real well right now. So it's coming in decently here, but I'm going to keep an eye on 5915 actually. Kind of interesting. Man Radio DXer says, for me, it was the same with FM signals during Tropo when I never knew anything about it. One day I got a station on a certain frequency, and then the next day it was gone. Gaetan, the problem when you start like I am is understand when listen USB, LSB, NF, narrow FM. So, international broadcasts, Gaetan, are in AM. Okay. The RSP1A is a wideband receiver. So for the most part, FM, you will use that in the VHF, UHF range above 30 megahertz most of the time. There's a little bit of FM in the shortwave bands, but narrow FM, NFM, is for pretty much everything that is, the police, like the Sortie du Québec, or anything like that. Amateur radio bands in the VHF range, like 2 meters, 70 centimeters. Almost anything above 30 megahertz is in narrow FM and FM. WFM, wide FM, is a mode that you'll use when you want to listen to FM broadcasts. So if you want to listen to the FM band with the RSP1A, the FM broadcast band is in wide FM. It's very wide in its bandwidth. That's why the audio is so such high quality when you listen to music. Upper and lower sideband. So when you listen to anything else than international broadcast bands on shortwave, you will be either in utility bands or amateur radio bands. And that's where utility bands, for the most part, is USB almost all the time. In amateur bands, it's USB above 10 megahertz and LSB below 10 megahertz. That's pretty much the rule, except there's a few exceptions, like 60-meter band, but for the most part, it works. That's a lot of knowledge and a lot of tweaking around, and it's just play around. And the best is to listen to what you hear and look at how wide it is in the waterfall and so on. But for a while, you'll probably have some hit and miss situation. For a while, it's going to be, I don't know how to tune that, or I don't know what that is, this one should be tuned and what mode that is, and so on. But slowly, you'll get the hang of it. So, Shady Para, when I got into shortwave, I knew how to listen to the propagation conditions when I sent a reception report. LSWUK, can you consider creating playlists for YouTube vids for easier searching? Yeah, I need to do that. When I got so many videos and so many things, I'm going to have to check that out and see how I'm going to set that up. Because I know that a lot of you want to have playlists on some of the videos. I'm going to check it out. I want to start making the SDR Uno videos, and I'll start with that, having its own playlist, and I'll try to make playlists of everything that all go into the same category. I know it would make things easier to search and find, for sure. Mark Cup, copy NPL 660, reading New Zealand on the whip. Just as good or better than my RSP1A and MLA 30 right now. Amazing little radio. PL 660 is an amazing radio. Old Radio Man, getting music 13840. Is that what you are hearing? Yep, that must be. Right now it's stock at 0204 UT. FLM 236, yes, to a point you can have too much wire. Some portables like the old Radio Shack DX390, Senji 818, you could blow the detection diodes. Dan V says, I want a 160 meter. Let me just go back here again. So I lost where I was. So 160 meter loop. Old Radio Man getting it S5. Hey, Mr. Paul. Changing his Simplio, Radio New Zealand, coming in on my radio wow with 10 feet of wire. Cool. Ralph Man 336. U.S. military did a study in the 50s and came to the conclusion for most receivers about 40 feet of wire on the wall of a room is plenty for most radios. Yeah, I do believe that there is a there's a moment where the more you put, it's not necessarily better. And for a lot of radios, what's happening is if you start overloading it, there's like a curve. So you put a wire longer and longer, and the signals get better and better and better. But for most electronics of portable radios, for example, there's a place where if you put longer wires, it tops off to a maximum signal, and then you put longer and longer and longer, and actually degrades. Because when a radio overloads, it actually degrades most of the time. So a very long wire can actually make your radio deaf because the circuit is overloaded by too many signals, and it actually makes all the other signals lower. Ruffleman 236. That said, a good tabletop unit of ham radio transceiver, you longer the antenna with proper tuning. It's like if I put my ICOM ICRD 500, I can put 200 feet of wire in that thing. It's capable of coping with that. So Simplio misses 12 meter rack shoe. Yeah, but there's solar cycle, and there's also Sportic Eastem. Sportic Eastem is something that is capable of propagating high frequencies also. Sportic E-skip is really and there's a lot of it actually in the summertime, and it turns on 10 meters and 12 meters a lot. So that's to look for every day. Always remember, because that's one of the things that is a problem. A lot of people think, with low solar cycles, that the higher bands never open, and that's not true. Actually, it takes very little solar activity to actually turn on the 10 meter band. Sometimes just having a few solar flux units more with one sunspot is enough. One of the biggest problems of the higher bands is sometimes they're open, but nobody goes there. Everybody thinks it's closed. So because everybody thinks it's closed, nobody goes there. Nobody calls CQ, and nobody knows that you're there, and nothing happens. And it's open. And that's the other thing, Gaetan time to time, we take experience. Yep, absolutely, Gaetan. But it's fun to see that, starting out and learning, and we all been there. I've been there at the beginning, trying to understand what was I doing, Take care, Kadarius. Joe Rodman says, no, Radio New Zealand here in Chicago on my Texan PL 660. Artis Alicrafters copying Radio New Zealand in Massachusetts, 13840, satellite 800, weak but audible. It should be, and the East Coast here is going to get better in the next hour. It should get better in about an hour and a half. That's what I've been experiencing a lot in the last few days. Keegan has 13840, Radio New Zealand International has 4 out of 5, and noise fading at times. The field BT radio. Oh yeah, that's the bad one. Mickey Dalmage, WHRI signing on 5920, and that's a powerful signal. So it probably got clobbered. Absolutely, you're right there. VE5UO, nice to have you here. Says Radio New Zealand copied in Saskatchewan, Canada. S7, S9 on his 411 20-meter Yagi. Cool. Nice to have you here. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when propagation is there, I mean, I still remember, and I'll never forget that. I still remember when we were at the peak of solar cycle in the early 90s. I would go up north for some stuff that my brother had to do. And I would just, tag along. You didn't want to go, you didn't want to do 2 hours of car ride and spend the day there and 2 hours back alone. Even though most of the time over there I was alone, I was okay because, I would say, well, it doesn't matter. I'll keep you company. And when you're gone over there, I'll spend the time over there with radio. So I'm not going to be bored. I'll wait for you to come back. We would drive up north, and I had a realistic portable scanner that went down to 29 megahertz. So I was able to tune every single day. We did that. So we went up north every 2 or 3 days through the month of like February and March. Somewhere like 1993, 94, somewhere around there, maybe 92. I don't remember. And I would bring the scanner along, and I was fascinated because I was hearing every single day throughout all of the day the U.S. Virgin Islands FM repeater that was on 29660. And just with the telescopic that I had on that scanner, and I remember being fascinated that I was hearing, the Virgin Islands FM repeater on 10 meters. And it was coming in every day. Every single day it was there. As soon as the sun rose, 10 meters was open with the FM repeaters. And I would listen to that all day, actually. I was so fascinated because over there it was so far with all the mountains and everything. There was almost nothing to listen to on VHF, UHF. Everything was blocked by the mountains. And the only 2 things I could hear, actually, or maybe 3 or 4, but nothing more. I would hear the Environment Canada weather on Mont Tremblant. I would hear the one repeater. There was a 1-2 meter repeater, amateur radio, but there was almost no activity, almost nothing happening there. And a couple of companies that were using VHF, but I pretty much didn't hear anything. So my fun was, if not hearing anything, at least I'm listening to the Virgin Island repeater with tons of activity, thousands of miles away on my little portable. And slow activity was so high that it was every day, every single day it was open. Graham Taplin, RSPDX and MLA30, no signal, but ICOM R8600 and MLA30 plus 13840 is about S5. That's interesting because your RSPDX and MLA30 should still get a signal. Is the MLA30 oriented in the same direction on the, unless you have more noise on your RSPDX, maybe from the computer? Kind of interesting because you should, here if I tune with my ICOM, I have pretty much the same signals because that's something to check for. Because somebody came back a few weeks ago and told me, you know what? When I tune with my RSP device, my signal is not as strong as on my Kenwood transceiver. And he said that. So I told him, I wrote back to him and I said, are you using the same setup, same antenna, and all of that? And he said, yeah. And I said, it's weird because, I mean, I can compare my SDR play with my ICOM ICRD 500 or my Yisu FT450. And it is as sensitive, it is as capable as these two radios. So technically, you should hear it. So that's interesting. Either you're having more noise on the RSPDX because of the computer-generated noise that goes in it, maybe. Or if your MLA30, maybe is kind of interesting. Because you really should get a signal on the RSPDX. That is intriguing. That is really interesting. V5UO says FT8 great mode to test propagation. It's always there. Yep. Simplio says, I hope and pray hams to be more adventurous. Yeah. Keegan 13840 Renew New Zealand S1 out of S9 through the noise fitting on the satellite internal antenna. Kamaxi 1976, nice to have you here. Yeah, Paul is scratching himself and taking a bath. How about that, man? Yeah. Nice little kitty. You are. Cool one. Nice to have you on board. Just bought my first shortwave radio, trying to figure it out. Well, you're at the right place. Dennis Pushkin, is there any difference between attaching a wire to... Okay, want to come over? Come on. Attaching a wire to embedded telescopic antenna and using a dedicated antenna input. Technically, there is, because technically, often the antenna inputs are dedicated, so they match the frequency. They match the resistance, and so there's less loss. Often that will also be what they will have is a some extra circuitry to somewhat prevent overload a little bit and cope with the signals that the wire will have. That said, for a lot of radios, it still works the same. And for some radios, I suspect that there's, that plug is just connected to the antenna input and that's it. But there is a difference on some radios for sure. Between clipping to the antenna and having a dedicated antenna input, if at least for the matching of the resistance and coping with the signals. Rodrigo Galter, good night. Nice to have you here, and have you here from Brazil, listening to Shortwaves with Texan PL660. B5UO says 10 meters FM, so much fun. Can't wait for the band to come back. In the summer, there's a lot of it. There will be a Sportic eSkip that will bring us some. There's 2962, which is the one from the New York repeater, which is always coming in quite strong here. Simply the Catskills 2966 FM will jump the stratosphere given the right conditions. But it is nice. It is nice to have. It is nice to have 10 meter open. That's for sure. And 10 meter repeaters are fun. They absolutely are fun. It is Taiwan International via WRMI in Spanish 5800. Cool. Glenn Zeckman, nice to have you here. Gitambalil, what happens if you climb at the top of Mont Tremblant? Is the reception better at altitude? Um, in shortwave radio, because it depends where you are, what you're listening to. For shortwave radio, there won't be that much, except for the fact that you might have less noise because you're far away from everything. Shortwave reception at the top or at the bottom of Mont Tremblant, everything equal, meaning let's say there's nothing there to interfere, should be pretty much the same. So there shouldn't be on shortwave much of a difference, whether you're on top of a mountain or at the bottom of a valley. On line of sight signals, VHF. Now that's a huge difference. And actually, a couple of times I had fun when I went to Mont Tremblant. One of the fun things that I did was bring a scanner radio and scan the frequencies at the top of the mountain, because you're so high up that you hear signals very far out at line of sight. So I remember on top of Mont Tremblant, I could easily hear Montreal area VHF repeaters on 2 meter because it's so high up. I actually hear where I live, when I'm in the backyard, I can actually hear the Laurentide Environnement Canada station on 162475 as it's broadcasting from the top of Mont Tremblant. So in the back, I actually hear it. It's funny because here in the office, I hear the one from Bromont in the Estrie region. In the backyard, it's Mont Tremblant, and there's a few places where it's like both are mixed together. It's just funny. But so for shortwave, there's really not much of a difference in the altitude because signals are skywave. They come from the ionosphere. They bounce off the ionosphere and come down. But on everything that's line of sight, so FM signals, FM stations, VHF, UHF ranges, that would increase the range of what you're listening to because it's so high. Dan V, 2966, Dallas, Texas, FM repeater. I hear it. I've heard that one a few times. Cool one. Question for anyone. My Ethon satellite field has a dedicated shortwave antenna input. Looks like terrestrial mail, ready for FM coax fitting. Can you suggest a specific indoor antenna for me? The thing is mostly the connector. What type of connector is on that radio? I'm not sure exactly what connector that is, but for pretty much any radio, but you will need an adapter for pretty much every radio. An indoor, if you're stuck with an indoor antenna, the best bet is the MLA 30 plus antenna. Not very expensive, 40-ish US dollars, shipping included, and that's probably your best chance of getting some decent signals inside. MLA 30 plus. And that will require a adapter for your radio. So I don't know what what type of connector is in that on that Ethon satellite radio, though. Augustin Bernard, when next will you be scanning the bands using the SDR receiver? We're going to do that. We'll try to do that on Friday. Tune the bands a little more and see what we can hear. Tony Turtle, I wonder if antenna on a insect's head has anything to do with the resonant frequency. Oh, God. My Treasure Hunter, have my ICOM 7300, 7100, and SDR Play, Jupiter MVT 7100, but trying to decide what new portable to buy. Highly considered the Texan 880, but wondering how well a Kenwood TH74D might work as a receiver. Hard to say. I have no hands-on. I don't know if anybody's using a Kenwood TH74D, but I'm not sure how that would compare for sure. Cool one says MLA30 antenna. I see it on Google. Thank you very much. I'll find out what adapter and order it. So the MLA30 uses a SMA, is an SMA plug. So you'll need it to be an SMA to whatever your radio has as an adapter. But MLA30 works. So what are you doing here? Now he doesn't know what to do anymore. How do I get back? Is he going to go back? And let's see how agile Paul is. Here we go. Ta-da! And that's all that to go down. Oh, man. Take care, Gaetan Belil. No problem. Wood Beast Production. What type of off-topic question? Yeah, SMA to whatever adapter you got. SMA female. So, what else do we have? Windows 2020. What's Windows 2020? Hey, G-Bone1. Nice to have you here. Yeah, eBay. Oh, you mean the next version coming out in a few weeks? Windows version 2004. From the X-ray. Yep, Comet Atlas is breaking up. It's broken up in several parts. Several parts now. So it's not going to make that big, nice flyby that it should have done in May, unfortunately, because it's not as bright now. Not as bright now. So what's the specific question of that about that Wood Beast Productions? I'm using it right now. That's what I'm using on my laptop. Works great. Works really, really well. One of the questions that Jacob also has is why, how come I get so many stations and he doesn't get as many? And he's wondering if it's the quality of the radio or the antennas and stuff like that. It's a mix of all of that. It's mostly not, in your case, not necessarily the radio itself. But it could be the antenna you're using. It also could be a question. It could be a question of the noise level around you, which is probably the number one of the big problems. A lot of what people don't hear that I hear often has to do with the fact that I have less noise overall than the people have on their own radios, and that is creating a problem. So it could be the antenna. So I'm using a loop in MLA30 that lowers somewhat the noise level. But also, if you have more noise than me in your reception, especially if you're using the telescopic antenna, you might be having more noise than I actually have, basically. So of course that's going to lower a lot of the stations, the number of stations you'll be listening to. Wood Beast Productions causing issues with pops and clicks on recording. Because it works well, and most of the time when recordings or stuff like that, it's mostly because of it could be the sound drivers and so on, the audio drivers. Yarabamba, you're right. I climbed a mountain in the Andes, and FM reception there was so good. I could catch radios hundreds of kilometers away. Absolutely. That is the cool thing about being very high up in the VHF, UHF range. It's kind of cool to scan around. So, Graham Traplin moved my antenna MLA 30 now, coming S9 music and noise 13840. Yeah, that's probably it. Moving the antenna. Cool one. Dear Shortwave channel in chat, assuming radios away from RF interference sources, is battery less interfering than AC cable or wall wart? Sorry, just gonna let Mr. Paul the cat out. Here you go, Mr. Paul. Here we go. So I use my radios on battery almost exclusively because the AC adapters will create a lot of noise and bring a lot of noise in the radios in general. So what I usually do is I just stay away from any adapters and any plugging adapters on the wall. That's for sure. Batteries are quiet and batteries work well. So I just keep a lot of rechargeable batteries because it's really better on batteries. I suspect some people, because I know some people don't buy, rechargeables or don't want to buy batteries. So they plug the radio in the wall in the AC adapter, and then they wonder why they're not getting anything. And basically what happens is that they can't get anything. Why? Because the AC adapter brings too much noise in the radio. What else do we have? G101 parks and beaches are the best. Yeah, higher the better is mostly for a VHF. On the HF, it's not much, But on Rudra, in Texan radio, how we will read the signal strength and signal to noise ratio, actually, what it indicates. Nice to have you here from Bangladesh. So there are two numbers. There are two numbers in the signal to noise ratio. The first number is kind of a minimum threshold. It kind of tells you where your noise is at. The second number will tell you the signal difference with that reference. Technically, what you want when you're listening to a signal is to have so if I just take I have one here that has one of those. I think this does, if I'm not mistaken. So typically what you'll want in a Texan radio or an XH data or anything, what you'll want is you'll see two numbers on the display. The first number, what you want to have is technically the first number and the second number. Wow. How can I explain this in a decently understandable way when you're tuning a signal? Because one of the numbers is kind of your baseline, and one of the numbers is your signal strength. Let me just do something here. Band. So in most of these radios, the basics is you'll have the first number that is the highest in a strong signal. So what you want to have is the difference between the first number and the second number in a Texan radio needs to be as big as possible. The more is the difference between the two numbers, the more signal you're getting versus the noise or the baseline noise you have in your radio. So technically, what you want is the first number to be the highest possible and the second number to be the lowest possible. That's going to give you the best signal level possible on the radio. So for example, here I'm tuning AM band and I have a 65 over 15. My baseline noise is very low. My signal level is very high. So that's, in a simple way, the reading of this is that it's, you want to have the best signal on the first number, the highest number possible, and the lowest number possible on the second number. So it's a signal to noise. It's the strength of the signal versus how much noise you have at that frequency. So the noisier you are, the more noise there is around you, the higher the baseline and the less of a difference you'll see between both. Also meaning you'll have more noise when you're listening to something. So think about it as the first number, the highest possible, the second number, the lowest possible. That's pretty much what you want. It's signal over noise ratio that it's showing. It's actually a very accurate way of measuring signals in a portable radio. No problem with Beast production, but make sure you have the latest drivers for audio. It's mostly that causes a lot of crackles and pops. The problem with the latest version, and that's the problem of, by the way, having always a version of Windows that is ahead of what people are having, is often the manufacturers have not yet updated their drivers for it to work better. Artist Ali Crafter's Kitchen, Grundig Satellite 800 sounds much better on batteries than a wall wart, but it's a battery hog. No problem, cool one. Yeah, it's better. It's better on the battery power on pretty much all the radios, usually. Yes, SINAD, SINAD, and SIMPO are other ways to measure. Prasad Asoldekar, hey Prasad, nice to have you on board. And nice to have you say a little hi. Stay safe, you too, my friend, in India. Keegan's been using batteries on his satellite radio. Sergio Cordero, buenas noches. Nice to have you here. There's a lot of noise when I try to tune into stations. Are there other electronic players like the one at University of 20? Well, you can go to sdr.hu. It requires that you log in, but you can have, there are a lot of SDRs out there, Kiwi SDRs. Just search for Kiwi, like the fruit, Kiwi SDR. And you will have a lot of online radios from all over the world you can tune. I have rechargeable batteries all the way. All the way. I use rechargeable batteries almost everywhere. Andy, nice to have you here. Pardon me, I am a complete noob to shortwave. I have a Texan 380 on order, and I'm planning on using a long wire antenna and clipping into the antenna. Is there any optimal length I am using speaker wire? Just put it as long as you can. Like we were saying earlier, that's going to be okay. No problem, my friends. Man Reader DXer, I prefer signal to noise ratio to a signal meter, as signal meter will show background noise, which gives a false indication of reception. Yeah, signal to noise ratio actually gives you the ratio. It tells you exactly, it measures, it knows the background noise, it knows the signal, and it gives you a, it compares the both of them and gives you a number that is actually the two numbers. The noise and the signal. It's not like an S meter that sometimes adds all of that together. Yes, that does make a difference, Andy. In a rural area, you're going to have better chance of getting good reception because you might have lower noise. So it's a very, 3.1 also depends on what you're using signal to noise radio for. But yeah, here we're talking in radio terms of listening to shortwave with these portables, because there's signal to noise ratio for everything in electronics. There is signal to noise ratio for tons of things. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. We're gonna take it easy for the rest of the night. It's 10:40 p.m. here. I'm gonna take it easy for the rest of the night. Play an hour or hour and a half of Halo Reach on my laptop, and we'll be back Friday. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. So Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and hope that you enjoyed the show as usual. Stay safe, everybody. Love you all, and without you guys, there would be no show. Hope you enjoyed what we had and what we talked about tonight. Thanks for being here, my great friends, and see you Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, 20 hours Universal Time. Don't forget, there's a Facebook group, official SWL channel. That's where it all continues when it ends over here. So bye, my friends. Stay safe.